It's really good to see in the past 2 days the passion and the synergy that's going on. It's the first time I've attended a smoke workshop. It's usually more about fire behavior and critical patterns and things that we do a lot of teaching to also practitioners on the ground. But smoke is also, as we know, is very, very important. One of those beasts, if you will, that we still have to deal with on the ground. I decided after yesterday's panel talk to kind of revise the title of the next several slides, because it's interesting to see perhaps how the Weather Service fits into Claudia's, and I don't know if Claudia's in the room, but it inspired me to think about the smoke management triangle and where the Weather Service fits into that triangle with the modeling, monitoring, and messaging. There are over 120 local National Weather Service offices across the nation. And this presentation is going to be more focused on the local support, but we're also getting a lot of national and regional support as well in terms of modeling and other types of products and services. So there are several types of forecast products that are out there in many ways that you can access these products to predict smoke behavior. And again, in a lot of these products, it's guidance to the practitioner, it's guidance to the public. It's about how smoke will behave and move around. It's not going to give you that end result. That's where the practitioner has to take that information and come up with basically the end result, the end message that you're going to convey, whether it's to the public or how the public is going to react and take action. There's different types of products. They're in the tabular form, a graph, graphical displays, and textual. We have found over the years that people just don't respond to just text. People learn and synthesize information in many different ways. And so by providing a broad product list, if you will, that allows people to kind of learn and synthesize that information and make good decisions accordingly. You can see here, this picture is a smartphone, and you can get a lot of this stuff on your smartphones that I'm going to talk about. And again, we provide guidance, we do not regulate. I know we produce the adjective ratings, but we are not the regulators there. That's other folks and other entities like EPA. Okay, so the modeling part of it. So I'm going to kind of go down the next several slides. You're going to go down those legs of the triangle and where we fit. Well, modeling pretty much is used to create all of our initial gridded forecasts. So we have this very large gridded database, and we use weather forecast models to initialize that database. It's whether it's temperature, humidity, or some of the smoke parameters that we output, like mixing height, transport wind, and ventilation rates. And in terms also adjective ratings. Other parts of the country do other different things. You might see dispersion indexes or clearing index. In terms of the Southwest, we typically concentrate on these three main smoke forecast tools. This gridded database is around 2.5 kilometers. So there's grid boxes with these element values all across the domain, all across the United States, including Alaska. Just alone in our forecast area, which is northern and central New Mexico, we have 36,484 grid boxes. I counted them last night. I thought, well, I want to be right on this. No, I didn't count them last night, but that's how many grid boxes just in Albuquerque service area alone. When it comes to providing the services to you guys, to the practitioners, because I think most of the audience here are practitioners, we meet every year and through the annual operating plan process that decides what types of information you're going to receive and how you're going to receive it. So if you want to keep up to date on the smoke management forecast and things like that, you want to read your annual operating plan, which gets updated every year. I'm going to ask, how many people read their annual operating plan every year? Okay, we got Rob. We got anybody else? Okay, so it does change on occasion, and it's the folks like Rita and Claudia, we meet and we talk about, do we need to make any changes? Because PM 2.5 is managed differently from each state, there has to be sections for each state in this annual operating plan, and we do for New Mexico versus Arizona. Okay. Now, these modeling, we have the modeling, it ingests into this gridded database. Forecasters might manipulate it, they might not. And then you have to access this database, and there's many different ways and you can access this forecast database. The National Fire Weather webpage, which is located here in this graphic, you probably can't see all the different choices. Those are the ones where you can get the graphical forecasts, the tabular forecasts in different forms, and then the text forecast. It's a one-stop shopping. Anywhere in the country, you can use this page. Just input your lat long, your zip code, your location in terms of town, and you can get the forecast. There's also a graphical page that allows you to see more of a broad spectrum of forecasts. It's not just your airshed that you're impacting, but you're impacting multiple airsheds. So you can see what the ventilation rates are across northern and central New Mexico, southern New Mexico, across the region in the forecast mode. We also have the Weather Activity Planner, which allows you to graphically see whether you meet the prescription parameters or not. So you can kind of put in here your thresholds, especially the weather thresholds in your burn plan. You can see color-coded what comes up in terms of your burn window. So it's a nice application there. Other types of special applications. We have the NOAA puts out an air quality webpage. They do dust concentration forecasts. They also do smoke concentration forecasts. This works really well during the dusty season. And here's an example, shows the whole region right here. This is a forecast. It's updated daily. I think it's like twice or 3 times a day. And we had a dust scenario that originated over by Bullhead City in southern Nevada, far western Arizona. And over the time, this dust got transported eastward and it impacted the Four Corners area. Farmington saw their visibilities drop down to 3 to 4 miles. So it's a really great way, we're not just talking smoke here, but we're also talking other types of particulates. And this is a really good forecast page. I should mention that all these web addresses that I'm mentioning here on these slides are going to be found on a white piece of paper located on the table in the Weather Service section, so you don't have to try to rapidly write all this down. The other page that is very dear to my heart is the local page that we produce at Albuquerque. This web page is something that developed. It was originally in-house graphics that forecasters use to convey or value add their forecasts, conveying a message of threats like red flags, superhanes conditions, if some of you know what that means, the very hot, dry, unstable days, dry lightning bust events. But we also built a tab there where it talks about ventilation. I'll talk about that in the next slide. So this page is updated twice daily, around 5 a.m. and around 4 p.m. And it's access the portal that basically populates this page is our gridded database. And we have 3 main tabs: threats, RH and temp, temperature, and ventilation. And I'm going to concentrate more on the ventilation tabs that are found within the main one, because that's probably that's more pertinent to this workshop. You'll find forecasts, and this is across our whole domain, our fire weather domain, a maximum transport wind forecast. So it's a snapshot of what the maximum transport wind would be for that day, for the day period, the direction and the wind speed. You're going to get a maximum ventilation rate. Again, it's a snapshot. So if it's poor, and this is an example of the max ventilation rate forecast for the day, it's actually I think it's next Wednesday, because this does go out 7 days. You can see that we're forecasting the maximum ventilation for the Albuquerque area is poor. So you know that it's basically poor all the way through the day. So it gives you a quick snapshot, and this is a situation awareness item. We also have maximum ventilation rate hour, the time that we expect the max ventilation rates occur. And that's going to change across the landscape. It's going to be outputted in military time. So it should give you a little bit of a picture of your burn window in that sense. You're also going to get the max ventilation rate trend. You know, as firefighters, we like to understand and know what trends are. And so it'll say from day to day, all the way out 7 days, how your max ventilation rate's going to change. We're going to provide the max mixing height for the day. That's very useful for fire behavior prediction. You know, we always rely on the Haynes, but the Haynes is only taking 2 slices of the atmosphere. The mixing height is looking throughout the entire atmosphere. And so you can really do a lot of good corollaries with fire behavior with your mixing heights. And then the new tab that we introduced just this last week is high split. And that is taking, well, actually I'll show it here. So in high split, we're going to be outputting, and we're going to get a better map. We're going to have a Google map, but we have 22 preset points that we're going to providing high split runs pretty much every hour. It's going to be updating every hour out 12 hours. So this is an actual, I think it was an image a few days ago. It was during the nighttime hours, so the high split is basically showing trajectories of the smoke plume, expected smoke plume trajectory. And since this was done during the nighttime hours, when I grabbed the image, it's going to be more dominated by surface winds because this box down here does not show hardly any lift at all. And so you're going to get this, and so if you're out in the field and you're wanting to find your burn window, you can be looking at these trajectories as they change per hour. I'm going to work a lot more with the Air Quality Board on making this better for your guys and how to use it in the field. But we're going to also tie it to the spot forecasts. So you'll be able to submit the spot request and it will pop up on this map. So there's a lot more we're going to be evolving with that. Okay, so the future with this web page, we're going to provide mixing height normals. We're also going to provide just normal ventilation data. For example, in November, what is the percentage of time based on the Albuquerque balloon sounding during the afternoon that it's poor? What's the percentage of time that it's excellent, good? Those are types of things that PIOs can use or burn managers can use to convey why we burn during a certain time of year and why we might have limitations during certain times of the year. We're going to work on the downdraft threat index, which is kind of something that I took personal with the Yarnell fire and how downdrafts can impact fire operations, both prescribed burns and wildfires. There are days that I consider are badass days. Yarnell situation was a badass day atmospherically wise, and we're going to try to output threat levels based on atmospheric projected conditions. The other thing is continual education. We've heard a lot about that. There isn't a lot out there, and I'd like to promote it a little bit more. We're going to have web pages. This is a current web page that I built. It's a Fireline web page, I should say a fire timeline web page for forecasters. But I think what we teach the forecasters, we should also be teaching you. Those are critical weather patterns, both ventilation-wise as well as fire behavior-wise. What's the fire business, the fuels aspects. So I'm working on a lot of educational type pages that'll wrap everything up into a nice bow. Okay, so the messaging and monitoring. We do a lot of text types of forecasts, and so the fire weather planning forecast, we're working on providing more verbiage about critical ventilation periods and general trends in ventilation. In the area forecast discussions, we're going to provide just more information about that, including confidence levels. And in the spot forecast, you're going to hear more about site-specific trends, inversions, when they're going to break, stable layers in the atmosphere. So again, when you're on the ground and you're seeing these things, you can say, oh, I remember that. That was in the spot forecast. When you convey that information to the public, you can kind of reorganize it to how they can understand it. But it's being truthful in telling the whole story. And as forecasters, we want to do a better job in giving you that kind of information. Also, some more messaging and monitoring. We're directly involved with lots of phone consultations. This is a week before the burn's going to take off. It's going to be just a few days before the burn's going to be conducted. Are the conditions still within our burn window? We do participate in event-driven conference calls. They could be complex prescribed burns or large wildfires. We do a lot of coordination with Jeff at the city office as well in doing statements, and that's a statement there that we would have coordinated with. Social media, very active in social media. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. This was an example of a graphic cast, as we call it. Again, a picture's worth 1,000 words. We've learned through social media studies that if you have some really good pictures with just a little bit of pertinent textual information, it goes a long way in conveying that message. So this is the Diego fire. It had started that day. It was an emerging incident. And so one of the forecasters drew kind of concentration rings of where the smoke would go, where it would be heavier, and provided a nice, that's a radar image. It says, yes, it was going on. It validates that there was a fire. And it talked about communities that would be impacted. And in a little bit of a, remember to minimize outdoor activities, the smoke is present. So a little bit of a safety kind of tone to it. We do a lot of tweeting. This is an example of the Flagstaff office that was tweeting during a prescribed burn. I think it was the Tucson area. So we are very active in messaging, and you can repackage some of these messages and putting out in the way that you want it as well. And so to sum up, the Weather Service supports the smoke triangle in many different ways. We are not a regulatory agency, but provide guidance tools. These guidance tools are used in support of tactical operations and also raising situational awareness. This is for ag, burns, different types of prescribed burns, different types of first entry, second entry, the fuel loading, and also wildfire. We can also help smooth out the edges, if you will, in messaging and monitoring. You can kind of consider us as the greasers. Make your job easier with a little bit of science behind it. So it gives it a little more validation. And I think we are a little bit better than 30% out there too. So, but anyway, that is it. So.